Hi everyone, I'm Sosteen. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to do something a little different. As many of you may or may not actually know, I am in fact a physician. And come to think of it, before I go on, I should probably change into Dr. Steen. Dr. Steen here. I'm here to talk to you today about the vaccine, the COVID vaccine to be more precise, but are we even talking about other vaccines these days? So in any case, I got asked a lot of questions because I am in healthcare and I am a physician, and I get asked questions like, what would you do? Would you take it? And would you give it to your family, and so forth? And I also get asked a lot of questions about how it works, the pros and cons, and what people think about it. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do know, and I'll talk a little bit about what we don't know. I'll go a little bit into the paper, and I'll talk about my own experiences with the vaccine. Of note, I do want to add that I'll be mostly talk about the Pfizer vaccine in this one, and it's not because Pfizer paid me to and Moderna didn't. It's nothing like that. It's literally because the Pfizer paper was the one I read because that's the one I heard we were going to be getting at our personal hospital. And if our personal hospital is going to be offering me the Pfizer vaccine, and I'm not going to say no. So that's the one I read up on, and that's the one I'm going to share. That being said, both vaccine papers seem very similar from a very preliminary reading of the Moderna one. And I encourage you to do your research and read the papers. They're actually both very readable. So let's get started. What I'm going to be giving you is data that's readily available and telling you how to read it, because that's a lot of what science is, being able to do your own research. So the paper in question is this one right here, the safety and efficacy of the BNT162b2 mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. It was in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is a very prestigious journal. And in my opinion, it is a very sound, very good paper. I would like to say that there were 43,548 participants who went under study, and we'll talk about them a little bit more later. It is double-blinded, meaning that the person who was getting the vaccine as well as the person who was giving the vaccine had no idea if the person was getting a placebo or if they were getting the actual vaccine. And that's actually considered the best kind of study, because say that the person who got the vaccine knew that it was in fact just salt water, they're not going to go out. They're going to be extra careful, and that may change the results. So for that reason, double-blind is considered the best kind of study, so that your own internal biases don't work against you. So the placebo here was actually salt water. Now, so I really like this particular graph here. So let me go up on it a little bit more. So they had 44,820 people who were screened, and some didn't meet eligibility criteria. They explained that more in the paper, but they had something or another that would keep them from getting it, whether or not they had an autoimmune disease or some other problem. So after that, out of that number, only 43,540 underwent randomization, meaning that some got the vaccine and some got the placebo. And here you can see that 21,720 got the vaccine and 21,728 got the placebo, which was salt water, as I said. Now, they had a follow-up of actually about 2 months in median, which is pretty good. And then you'll notice that 18,860 got the first dose, so the numbers were actually fairly even, and in my opinion, these numbers are fantastic. You're very lucky to get numbers this good. And then 3 weeks after that one, a bunch of people got the second dose, or a bunch of people got the second placebo. And those numbers, again, are very even. And you'll notice that some people withdrew, and you will also notice that some people died. One person died here, one person died here, 2 people died here, 1 person died here. Now, this is the question I get asked most frequently. Oh my God, those people died. They died of the vaccine, right? Not necessarily. In fact, the study shows, or explains rather, that the people who died of other causes such as cardiac disease. And you can read it in the paper, but they did not in fact die of anything related to the virus. In fact, more people died getting the placebo than people died from the actual vaccine state. So you can say that the salt water killed more people than the people who died of the vaccine. But on the other hand, like simply quite simply, when you have 43,000 people that you're tracking that long, people will die. A lot of these people were in fact older, and those people are more at risk of bleeding out from their brain, which some people did, of having heart attacks. And unfortunately, that's just life in general, that when you have a number of people that large, some people will die over a course of several months. So again, not due to the vaccine, natural other causes. Now, if you look at this chart, and I like to, when I read a paper, while I'm reading the paper, I tend to read the whole thing. But when I'm explaining a paper, I tend to go by graphic because it's a little bit more easy to understand than just trying to go through each of the words. So FYI, I'm not going to go through every little nitty gritty part of the paper. If you want to talk about the N number, or if you want to talk about the p-value and so forth, this video is way too simplistic for you. You are way above this course. Just go read the paper and figure it out for yourself. What I want to do with this video is just give people who don't have the basic statistics and the basic knowledge of medicine to kind of have an overview of the vaccine. Now, this is a particularly interesting one. Every single study basically has it. It tells you what they had in terms of demographic. They're showing you that they split up the people really randomized. The randomization worked well, meaning that half the people were female and half the people were male in both groups. And you'll notice that the racial percentages were about even in everything. For instance, Black people made up 9.2% in the vaccine group, 9.4% in the placebo group, and it's the same for the white people. And this shows that they didn't separate people out based on race. You do not want to see all Black people get just a test vaccine. That's wrong. So they're just kind of proving that they did this the right way. And if you want to look at that a little bit more, you can do that. What I find really interesting is they did separate the people out into age groups. You'll notice that they had a significant number of people, 42.2%, that were over the age of 55, and the age of 55 was chosen because, as you know, that's the number that above which you're more at risk of getting a bad outcome from COVID. So for that reason, they had 42.3% of people above the age of 55, which I thought was a very interesting and good point to actually study. They also looked at other things like BMI, which, since they have shown that a higher BMI does put you at risk of having a worse outcome from COVID. Okay, so this is talking about the side effects that people had after getting the doses of the vaccine. Each dose one gave them 83% of people between the ages of 16 and 55 years noted having pain at the injection site. The green, blue, and the orange are actually whether or not that pain was mild, moderate, or severe. You'll notice that even though 83% of people said that they had pain, very few people said that it was severe. This one is redness and this one is swelling. So redness and swelling. And so you'll notice that it was about equal for before and after, 78 and 83. That's relatively similar. But you will notice that older people actually noticed less pain and swelling. So that is an interesting point, because one question I get asked by a lot of older people are, I hear that older people have worse side effects. And as you can see from these numbers, 71 versus 83, younger people actually had more pain at the injection site. Now, this chart in chart B is talking about the systemic side effects. So let me shrink this down. It'll make things easier to look at. So fever, if you look at this, at only 4% of younger people and 1% of older people noted fever after the first dose. The more people actually noticed fever after the second dose, 16% there, 11% there. And again, you'll notice that younger people tend to have more symptoms. Fatigue, you actually 47-59, 34-51. So again, the second dose apparently has more side effects. And the same for all of these. And generally, you'll notice that younger people seem to have more side effects, but for sure, the second dose has more side effects than the first. But this doesn't mean you absolutely will be fatigued and feverish and all that. Because if you notice, still, even after the second dose, 16% here, 11% actually had fever. So it seems that there are side effects, and you can look at the exact percentage for your age group with this chart, but it doesn't seem uniform. Not everybody had it. Pain at the arm does seem pretty uniform though. And then this is actually talking about the incidence. So they started counting the number of COVID cases 7 days after the second dose. So that means that you get the first dose, you wait 3 weeks, you get the second dose, and then you wait 7 days. And then they started counting how many people actually got COVID. Now, the way that they did it was they would count the number of people who got it with the vaccine and then without. So if you look at that, what we're actually looking at is that 8 people who got the vaccine got COVID. And if you look at the number of people who did not, who got the placebo, it was 162. If you divide 8 by 170, which is, it comes to 4.7. So we're looking at about 95%. That's where that 95% comes from. Okay, so let's skip ahead to the actual meat of the data. I find this graph personally like mind-blowing. So you're gonna see 2 lines here. One's this blue one right here, and one's this red one right here. The blue one is the placebo or the salt water, and the red one is the people who got the vaccine. And basically each dot that you see here is an individual that got COVID. Now the darker dots are, of course, people who got severe COVID, but we won't get into that. That's a little bit more too complex for this particular video. But the important thing to note here is that here in the beginning, you'll notice that both groups, the blue line and the red line, got COVID at about the same rate, about 28 days here. Rather, at 28 days exactly here, that's when the vaccine counting begins, meaning that's where we count the people who get COVID and count that as people who got COVID in spite of having the vaccine. You'll notice that between 0 and 28, you're already starting to see some benefit, but we're going to get into that later. Now, I want to talk about how dramatic this is. Because 28, it begins here, the floor is actually here. Each dot is an individual who got COVID. You can literally count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people who got COVID after getting the vaccine in this group here. Meanwhile, on the blue line, like, I can't even count how many. Like, I don't even know if you can see the individual blue dots to count all 162. That's a lot of people, and that's really dramatic. So that's, again, a lot of evidence saying that this vaccine works. If you look at this box right here, it's actually a close-up of this area right here between days 0 to 21. And what you're seeing is that around day 12, let's just say day 12 for the ease of it, you're already starting to see a lot of benefit after that first dose, after 12 days. You're already seeing that differentiation in the line. However, the people who created the vaccine, Pfizer, does not count that as the official start date because they still think that, we can do better. Because as you can see, day 12 is here. A bunch of people got infected here before the real vaccine kicked in. So that's why you need the booster shot, even though one shot is already fairly effective. So those are the 3 points I really want to talk about in terms of the paper. The paper is a double-blinded, well-made study with a lot of participants, and the side effects look good. It looks safe to me. And finally, we also showed that it works. Those are the 3 points that I really hope you take away from watching this video. They make a point of saying that they were in fact funded by Pfizer. They also gave a lot of supplemental information. So if you want to go look through those, that's all free on the internet. This is all free on the internet. Like, I happen to be a doctor and happen to download this from my workplace, but I went home. I do not have the special intranet for my hospital at home, and I was able to download it free from my home too. So fantastic paper. Now let's talk a little bit about how mRNA vaccines work, because that's the other question I get asked. So mRNA vaccines are really interesting. So let me go to this one. This one is from a paper in Nature. Literally, my dream as a child was to get into Nature. Never happened, but I don't think it's gonna happen. It's okay. But they're a fantastic journal. They are the journal. So this one is from Nature, and they talk about how mRNA vaccines work. So the way that it works is that they inject the mRNA into you. Now, I don't know if you remember this from high school biology, and if you are in fact in high school, you probably remember this very well. All of our cells, well, most of our cells have DNA in them, and the DNA resides in the nucleus. DNA is very stable, and the way that it works is that it opens up, and then you have DNA transcriptase that'll come and copy it and turn it into mRNA. The mRNA then goes outside of the nucleus where ribosomes will convert them into proteins. And then the proteins actually do the work. So basically the DNA has the information, the mRNA carries that information, and ribosomes convert that information into proteins and actual things that work. So you can think of ribosomes as your 3D printer. The way that mRNA vaccines work is we have mRNA and they are put into liposomes, or these, you can see it right here in figure 1. They're lipid nanoparticles and they basically go around the mRNA, and so that the cell actually wants to just soak them up. Like the cell's not just going to eat up regular mRNA and just, well, it will, but not to any like appreciable amount. So this actually is a vehicle so that the cells will actually soak up. And then that mRNA, once it's inside a cell, will utilize the ribosomes inside of your natural cells to make proteins. These proteins are not the inside of the virus that give you the virus. These proteins are from the surface molecules of COVID that your body would recognize. They then put those proteins on the surface of the cell. And then once those proteins are on the surface of your cell, it's kind of out there for display, and your body's innate T cells will actually recognize them and start building antibodies and building up immunity against them. Now, they're relatively new in that we haven't had an mRNA vaccine before. We have been doing a lot of research into them, and the FDA certainly believes that they are safe. I just speaking in a logical, sensible way. I mean, could I be wrong? Absolutely. But just logically speaking, it makes absolute sense that they would work. And the reason these vaccines won the race is because they're really easy to make in a lab. And if they're really easy to make in a lab, they're really easy to upscale and manufacture for people, which is why they're a really fantastic way of making vaccines for people in a pandemic. So because you can make them like this. Speed is of the essence here. So I personally think that they're safe. People are like, oh my God, what if they go into your cells and they start manufacturing viruses? Again, these mRNAs do not make every single part of the virus. It literally just makes a surface protein. Say that you had a mole. It makes a mole that your eyes could recognize. That's how it works. It seems to work quite well. And there's, again, no problems with safety. The other thing that I have to say is, so the third frequently asked question I get about this is, what if it renders you infertile? Vaccines don't render you infertile. Next question. So we've talked a little bit about how the vaccine works. We talked about the paper. I didn't go into the nitty gritty, but I hope you have a better idea of how the paper works. And then I talked a little bit about how mRNA vaccines work. If you have other questions about it that aren't based on conspiracy theories, I'm happy to answer them. I will try to keep up with the questions for the next 3 days. After that, I'm sorry, you guys. I do have a full-time job still, and my job is insanely busy because our hospital is very full, because all hospitals are very full. So then let's see. The one thing I did want to talk about was masks. One thing you may have seen from me before was a mask video. I, at the time, made masks out of paper that we find in our hospital. That mask video was made not necessarily for the general public. It was made because at the time, New York City was overrun by COVID and they had literally no masks. People were wearing bandanas. Healthcare professionals were doing their job in hospitals with zero N95s, which is terrifying to me. At least now when I do my job, I get a fresh, clean N95 every single day. And I wanted people to know how N95s worked and why we needed them. Now, a lot of people use the pattern, and I'm really grateful for the University of Florida for releasing it. I'm not recommending that material anymore because most people don't need them, and really that mask video was for people in New York City and people who were donating masks for healthcare workers when we had nothing else. Again, now we do not have an N95 shortage. Now I do beg everyone to wear a mask when they do go out, because we're still in a pandemic, and even if miraculously we can get everyone vaccinated in the next 6 to 9 months, it's still gonna be 28 days until that kicks in. Moreover, there's some things that the study doesn't really go into. One, how long do you actually have immunity? And we really won't know this answer for several years. I am sure Pfizer and Moderna are studying this, but We don't have the answers. To the other question I get asked is, would you get vaccinated? Yes, and I did. And I was actually really lucky. I only had some mild arm pain for the next day. I'm also was pretty fatigued, but completely honestly, I was on a string of huge number of calls. Like, I think I was tired for other reasons. Like, I have a 2-year-old and he didn't sleep those 2 days, so I don't know. Thirdly, I would say that the third question I get asked is, would you vaccinate your kid? And I would say right now we have zero data on children. The fact of the matter is that research data was not done. Initially, the study was only done on people who did not have autoimmune diseases. And they also did the study on people who were not pregnant, people who were over the age of 16. So that being said, I'm not pregnant and I'm over the age of 16 and I don't have any autoimmune diseases. I fit perfectly into that pool of people where the study studied. So because of that, I feel very good about getting the vaccine myself. And if I could, I would absolutely vaccinate my husband. As for my child, if data comes out that it's safe for children, I will absolutely vaccinate him right away. That being said, the ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, have personally said that they don't think that the COVID vaccine should be withheld from pregnant and lactating women because COVID could be a lot more devastating. I personally think that if you are someone who gets anaphylaxis to vaccines, or if you are someone who gets anaphylaxis and needs to carry an EpiPen, you should absolutely talk to your primary care physician and figure out if the vaccine is right for you. In fact, for anyone who has any major medical problems, you should absolutely talk to your primary care physician, someone who knows your personal medical history really, really well, and figure out if you should get the vaccine. And I'm really excited. I'm all set to get the second dose this coming week. I'm really excited to hit day 28. I hit day 12, that magical number where you start seeing that difference today. So I can't lie. I'm already breathing a huge sigh of relief. So I'm anesthesia. I'm an anesthesiologist. Some people are like, what do you guys do? I do put people to sleep for a living. I get to take away pain during labor, pain during surgery, and pain after surgery. I do nerve blocks. I also do a lot of intubations, meaning that if you're having trouble breathing somewhere in the hospital and you will need to go on a vent to help you breathe, you need to have a special tube placed in your throat to help you breathe. It also not only just gets you the air that you need, it also prevents stomach acids like the hydrochloric acid in your stomach from going back into your lungs and giving you aspiration pneumonia, which basically dissolves your lungs and killing you. So it's something that a lot of people who have COVID need. And guess who puts the tubes down your throat? Anesthesiologists, ER doctors, and intensivists. So because of that, it is a high-risk job. And it's very stressful, but on the other hand, it's been very rewarding and really scary. And the fact that now I have some protection against the virus makes me breathe a huge sigh of relief, because it's not just me. I'm really terrified about, what if I infect someone else and that person dies? What if I infect my family? What if I work with chemo patients? What if one of them? It's a genuinely terrifying situation. So I beg all of you, please be careful. I hope I answered a lot of questions. I hope I alleviated a lot of fears. And if you have anything that you want me to talk about more, put it below. If I get a lot of really interesting questions and things I didn't really touch upon, I actually will consider making a second video, because I think this is a very important thing to talk about. So please continue to do your research and stay safe, guys.